Hello everyone, George DeSantis here with the midweek version, a midweek version of the Look at the Market. It's Wednesday night at about 10:45. I thought what I would do is just take a quick look at the general market like the S&P and the Nasdaq, and then take a look at some individual stocks using Shaken Analytics and TC2000, the software that I use generally to screen for stocks that I might want to trade the next day. So I'll let you in on how I approach that at night sometimes, not every night. Before we begin, though, um, there's a circular picture of a medal here. There's a picture of a medal here. Follow the cursor, and a few people have asked me, what is it? You will notice that it says F.R. Dalmada. That's my grandfather's name. His name was Francisco Dalmada, and he was a winemaker. He was what they call in those days a compounder, and he made a bitters called Arawak bitters, and he was awarded a few gold medals, a number of gold medals for first prize for the best bitters in the world at that time. And this medal here he won for a competition in 1878. That's the front of the medal, and it was in France. Here's the back of the medal, and that's how thick it is. It's pretty hefty. I have another one. We had a few of them. They were passed on to some family members. Here's another one for a competition that was held this time in Calcutta in 1883. That's the front, and this is the back of the medal. Calcutta 1883. Francisco Dalmara. So that's what that story is, the story behind the medal, picture of the medal. Now, as we usually do, for legal purposes, I have to put up this disclaimer and simply let you know that it's impossible for me or for anyone else in this sort of format to give any particular individual investment advice. First of all, I'm not an investment advisor for those who are new anyway. And I'm a psychologist and I do this for my own purposes. And it's a YouTube video that anyone can look at, but you still have to do your own research. It's very, trading and investing is one of the most difficult things you could do. It's very taxing and it's not easy. So if you need professional advice, seek it out from someone who has that kind of training. I'm self-taught. I don't have any licenses or anything like that. Okay. All right. So we're going to start looking at some stocks, and first we look at the index. So here's a weekly chart of the S&P 500. And things have changed a bit this week. You can see this. Let me point it out. Um, we were finding a lot of resistance between this 50 and 618 retracement level, or retracement levels rather. And now we have broken above that level. That level was around 29.20 or so. In any case, we're now closing at 29.71. So, and the other thing to notice here, as I notice, is that I was talking about resistance at the 50-day moving average. Well, it would be a 50 week here, or 50 period. This red line, this magenta line here, and also this 30 weighted moving average. Well, we broke above it and we closed above it so far this week. Of course, we're on Wednesday. We haven't finished the week yet, but it's very encouraging to see this from a bullish standpoint. And I bought some stocks. I bought a few stocks, and I bought back some Microsoft, and I did some other things in my accounts because this here is quite impressive. Now, what's more impressive is when we look at the Nasdaq. This is the S&P. Now, you notice that the parabolic is still below the most recent bar. I mentioned last weekend that it seemed as though it was closing the gap and eventually it might go above the next bar. Well, folks, it's continuing to remain bullish. It's saying the trend is still up. Second, and another thing to notice is that the 4 EMA crossed above the 9 EMA back here 2 weeks ago, and it's continuing to trend up like that. So I got much more bullish. I said before on the weekend that I was very cautious, because of this resistance that it looked like we might bounce back down. But this thing seems like it's going higher. Now, let's look below here. We see that MACD turned bullish so far this week. MACD is above the zero line. Last weekend, we saw that it was just sitting right there, just below it. Now, if you go to Williams per centaur, you'll see that since it crossed over here, it has remained above the magenta line, the minus 50 line. The sum of the rate of change indicator has not confirmed that yet. And but when you take all these things that we just described here into consideration, like I said a couple of weeks ago, if you put a gun to my head and say you have to go long or short, hey, I gotta go long. Hence the reason I bought some stocks again, All right. Let's look at the NASDAQ. NASDAQ is more interesting, I think. Oh, before we get to the NASDAQ, how about the daily chart? Let's look at the daily chart. You see the daily chart is in a squeeze here, and we don't know whether squeeze only tells you to look for more volatility. Volatility has come back a bit from, remember when it was here, it was very high volatility, and it's come back quite a bit. You can see that on the daily chart, you have the 4 over the 9, 9 over 30, and that's an uptrend, and you have parabolic below the most recent bar. So both the daily and the weekly charts are looking pretty bullish. Now, a little bit of caution here, because MACD histogram, although it will probably continue to trace a higher level here, a higher high, if it doesn't, we might see on the daily chart a bearish divergence of MACD. That's very tentative right now. Now, come down to my favorite indicator. I'd say one of my favorites anyway. And that's Williams per centaur with a 30 period. And you can see that since it crossed here at the same time that the 4 crossed over the 30 and the 9 and the 9 over the 30, it's remained above. So if you just trade off if I stopped looking at a lot of other things and just take everything else off the chart and say, hey, George, buy when Williams crosses above it and sell when it crosses below it, maybe I'll make some money, but I don't know. I haven't done that. Now take a look at the sum of the rate of change indicator on the daily chart. You could see that it's crossed above the 4% line, and it's remaining there since it crossed above it here. This is the first time it did that again, you see, right here. So, all right, let's now look at the NASDAQ. So here's a weekly chart of the QQQ, which is an ETF of the NASDAQ. So you can see that we had this drop, and then the NASDAQ continued to go up here, to rise. Now, parabolic went below the most recent bars. We have a nice uptrend here. It's often said that the NASDAQ leads the rest of the market. If that's the case, boy, it's really showing you even more strength than the S&P, and it's leading the market higher. MACD, you can see how the 4 is above the 9, 9 above 30. It's all looking very bullish here on the weekly chart. Then, of course, MACD turned bullish recently, 3 days ago, although it's been trending up from below the zero line, which is, according to Alex, is one of the best times to be buying the market. And if you look at Williams per centaur, it crossed over here, crossed over that magenta line, and it's continuing to trend up. Some of the rate of change indicator is confirming that. I want to move a little more. So if we go to the daily chart, if we take a look at the daily chart, this is the one that I trade the NASDAQ off of. I use those Qs or TQQQ. You can see that we're making a new high. We're at 2 standard deviations right now, that dotted green line. The 4 is above 9, 9 above 30. So as far as the moving averages are concerned, they remain bullish in an uptrend all the way from here when they crossed over. The 4 never went below the 9, and 9 never crossed below the 30. Parabolic is below the most recent bars, so the trend is up, and you can see how percent R looks bullish here, and the sum of the rate of change indicator is continuing to look bullish, and that's the one that I use. I will not sell until it crosses below this 4% line, and it's not, of course, it's not there yet. Let's take a look at some individual stocks on Shaken. So let's take a look at some individual stocks, as I said, using Shaken Analytics. What I'm doing here is I'm going to show you, first of all, this list of ETFs, the 11 or 12 of them, of the spiders, and you can see that the top performing one is the Qs. I have it's TQQQ here, but it's really the Qs. This is a leverage one, and you can see that it's almost oversold and rising. So I'm looking for the ones that are oversold particularly. XLC, you can see is performing well. It's bullish, and you can see that it's rising. XLK, similar kind of thing. You can see how it's rising here. XLV, well, it's been going up for a while, so and the money flow is not so good. But so there's less interest in XLV than some of these other ones. I own all 4 of these. I intend to own the top 4. All right, let's turn to Shaken Analytics. We'll take a look at some individual stocks. First of all, let's look at the sector ETFs, and you can see that the top 4 funds, I own all 4 of them. They're all 4 bullish. The Qs, XLC, which is communications, XLK is technology, and XLV. You can always replay the video and pause it if you wish, but these are the ones that I own. And now we turn to something else. So this is a list of stocks that have performed pretty well over a period of time. Now you can see all the green here. Well, that means that most of these were up today. So the first one I want to look at is let's take a look at CDNS. I used to own this. It's now overbought, so I will wait for a pullback. But you see how nicely it looks here and on relative strength, and it's very bullish. Now the next one we want to look at is Intel. I bought some of Intel recently, today, in fact, early this morning. And let's put these on the checklist. You can see all the checklist is pretty green, and Intel has started to trend up here. So I'll go through these pretty quickly. You could always pause and rerun it. Accenture is another one that I bought recently. It's broken above the 200-day. All of these indicators look pretty interesting. It's also bullish. Adobe, I don't think we looked at Adobe yet. Similar, green, neutral. It's in a neutral zone here, but trending up, and it has a momentum breakout. I want to make sure I look at my time. Did I look at Accenture? Yeah. Okay. There's an ETF that has performed very well. In fact, it's one of the few stocks or ETFs that's making a higher high than the recent high back in March, back at the end of February. You can look it up, and it's trending up here from a almost oversold region. So it's an interesting. I don't own it. There's another one in that family of ARC. You can look it up. CRM, which is Salesforce. You can see it's becoming oversold, and it was up slightly today. But that's one I'm going to keep an eye on. Tomorrow I might even look to trade that. Let's look at Facebook. Facebook is looking interesting. Microsoft. I own Microsoft, but and you can see that it's almost oversold and looking to tick up again. Folks, that's all the time we have. I will list a few more for you in the email. Have a good day.